Imagine digging in a quiet farm field, expecting nothing more than dirt and potatoes, and instead uncovering a human foot buried just inches beneath the soil. That's exactly what happened to me during my third week as a Peace Corps volunteer in Bolivia. But what terrified me the most was the foot itself. It was what started moving beneath the ground after we buried it again. 3 weeks after arriving in a remote Bolivian village, I accidentally uncovered something that should never have been found. A human foot buried in a potato field. The men standing beside me did panic. They didn't even look surprised. They just laughed, picked it up, and buried it again. That was the moment I realized something was very wrong with that farm. Sometimes the most terrifying discoveries happen by accident. I was helping local farmers plant potatoes when my shovel hit something soft beneath the soil. When the dirt fell away, a human foot rolled out of the ground and stopped beside my boot. But the real horror started later that night, when I heard something dragging itself through the fields outside my window. Have you ever had a moment where your body knew something was wrong before your mind could explain it? A moment when the air feels heavier, the silence feels unnatural, and every instinct inside you tells you to leave immediately. Because that's exactly what happened to me in Bolivia. 3 weeks after arriving there as a Peace Corps volunteer, I found something buried in a potato field that should never have been there. And even now, years later, I still don't know whether what I saw was human or something much worse. When I first got to Bolivia, I was excited. I had wanted to do something meaningful for a long time, and joining the Peace Corps felt like the right step. The idea of helping people while living in a completely different culture sounded like the kind of experience that would change my life. In a way it did, just not the way I expected. The village I was assigned to was small and isolated, surrounded by hills and farmland. Dirt roads connected simple clay houses. Stray dogs wandered through the streets, and potato fields stretched out so far that they disappeared into the mountains. During the day, the place felt peaceful. Children played outside, farmers worked under the sun, and smoke from cooking fires drifted slowly through the evening air. My host family welcomed me warmly from the moment I arrived. They treated me like their own son, helping me practice Spanish and laughing whenever I mispronounced something. Most nights we sat around a small wooden table eating soup or potatoes while my host father talked about farming and my host mother quietly listened. The first week felt almost perfect. But after a while, I started noticing small things that didn't quite make sense. Every evening, right when the sun began to disappear behind the mountains, the mood in the village changed. People stopped lingering outside. Children were called indoors. Doors closed earlier than I expected. And once the sky turned completely dark, the entire place became silent. Not the normal quiet of nighttime, but a deep, unnatural silence. No music, no talking, no dogs barking, not even insects. At first, I told myself I was imagining things. Maybe rural villages simply slept earlier than the places I was used to. But one night, while I was lying in bed trying to fall asleep, I heard something outside the house. Footsteps. Slow footsteps somewhere out near the fields. Step. Pause. Step. Pause. Step. Pause. It sounded like someone walking across loose dirt very slowly. I sat up in bed and listened carefully. The sound continued for a few seconds and then stopped. The next morning, I mentioned it casually to my host mother. She didn't answer right away. She just looked at me for a moment before telling me not to go outside at night unless I absolutely had to. She didn't explain why. A few days later, I met a group of local guys around my age. They worked on a potato farm just outside the village. Compared to everyone else, they seemed relaxed and friendly. They joked with me, asked questions about America, and laughed at my broken Spanish. I was relieved to finally meet people my age. After hanging out with them a few times, they invited me to help them plant potatoes in a new section of their farm. It sounded harmless, so I agreed. We left early in the morning, just after sunrise, and walked out toward the farmland. The ground was still damp from rain the night before, and the air carried that cold smell of wet soil and grass. As we got farther away from the village, the landscape opened up into wide, empty fields. The farm they brought me to looked ordinary at first, a large patch of dark soil bordered by tall grass and a few crooked trees. But the moment we stepped into the field, I felt it again. That strange warning feeling in the back of my mind. The air felt still, too still. There was no wind and no birds flying over the field. One of the guys handed me a shovel and told me to dig shallow holes about 6 inches deep, so I started digging. The soil was soft and easy to break apart, and after a few minutes I fell into a rhythm. Push the shovel down, lift the dirt, move over, repeat. After maybe 20 minutes, my shovel suddenly struck something buried beneath the surface. It didn't sound like hitting a rock. The sound was dull and soft. I pushed some dirt aside with the edge of the shovel and leaned down to look closer. At first, I saw something pale in the soil. Then the dirt shifted, and I saw toes. Human toes. My entire body froze. For a moment, my brain refused to accept what I was seeing. I crouched down slowly and brushed more dirt away with my hand. The loose soil collapsed, and a human foot rolled out of the ground, stopping right beside my boot. I jumped back immediately. My heart started pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. "What the hell is that?" I shouted. The men behind me walked over slowly. For a moment, I expected them to panic. Instead, one of them laughed. Another bent down calmly, picked up the foot, dropped it back into the hole, and kicked dirt over it. Just like that. As if it meant nothing, that moment scared me more than the discovery itself, because none of them looked surprised. They acted like they had seen something like that before. I stared at the patch of dirt they had just covered. Then something happened that I still can't fully explain. The soil moved. Not much. Just a small shift, like something underneath it had pushed upward. I stepped back and asked if they saw it. None of them answered. One of the men quietly said something in Spanish that I only partly understood. It wakes up when disturbed. The rest of the men exchanged quick glances before another one clapped his hands and said we should keep working. But none of them dug anywhere near that spot again. The silence in the field grew heavier after that. Eventually, I told them I needed to go back to the village. They drove me back in their truck, but the ride felt completely different from earlier. No one joked. No one laughed. Several times I noticed them glancing behind us toward the farmland, as if they were afraid something might be following us. When they dropped me off, I went straight inside my host family's house and told them everything. The digging, the buried foot, the strange movement in the dirt. My host father listened quietly until I finished. Then he said something that made my blood run cold. That land should have been abandoned years ago. He explained that many people had disappeared near those fields in the past. Some villagers believed bodies had been buried there after violent events long ago. But after a while, strange things began happening. Farmers working the land heard footsteps at night when the fields were empty. Some claimed they saw figures walking slowly between the crops after sunset. Others said they heard digging sounds coming from underground, as if something beneath the soil was trying to reach the surface. That night I could sleep. Around midnight, I heard the same footsteps again outside the house. Step, drag, step, drag. I walked to the window and looked out across the moonlit fields. At the far edge of the farmland, I saw a figure walking slowly through the crops. Its body moved strangely, like one of its legs wasn't working properly. Then it stepped into the moonlight, and I saw something that made my entire body go cold. One of its feet was missing. The figure slowly turned its head toward the village. For a brief moment, I felt like it was looking directly at me. I closed the curtain immediately. The next morning, I contacted the Peace Corps office and told them I needed to leave the village right away. Within a few days, I was on a plane back home. But exactly 1 week after I returned, another Peace Corps volunteer from that same village disappeared and was never seen again. Even now, I still think about that farm in Bolivia, about the buried foot, about the thing I saw walking in the moonlight. And sometimes late at night, when everything is quiet, I remember the sound of footsteps outside the house. Step, drag, step, drag. And I wonder if whatever I disturbed in that field is still looking for the rest of its body.